Well, South Africa has long been hailed as a gateway to Africa, connecting the continent to the global economy. But the recent unrest, coupled with the Transnet cyber attack, brought our freight industry to a virtual standstill. So what are the implications of these disruptions? To answer this, we're joined by Mike Walwyn. He's the Director of Maritime Affairs at the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. Mike, thank you for joining us. What a blow. Durban Port's been struggling to try and get some sort of improvements and technologically upgrade itself, and now the cyber attack.
Yes, that's right. I mean, in fact, they had pretty well upgraded it. They had reasonable systems running. But then came the attack. Now, that effectively put them out of action for a further 6 days. And if you add that to the 6 days already lost during the unrest, you can imagine the shock to the supply chains. So the slow response to this attack for us has been most concerning.
Durban Port was listed as one of the 3 worst ports in the world. Has it managed to jack itself up a little bit along with Cape Town?
Yeah, I wouldn't say necessarily so, because performance, productivity at the ports has not really improved to any great extent. And that rating by the World Bank was fairly recent. So although I think efforts have been made to improve matters, I don't think it's really come to that yet, no.
Mike, any idea from your side if this cyber hack was linked to the unrest that we saw in KZN 2 weeks ago, or is it a separate incident?
Well, we don't know that. I mean, Transnet are not saying, but generally speaking, when you get these things, it's either a ransomware attack, in which case big money has to be paid, and we're not aware of anything like that, or else it's instigated by somebody with some sort of grudge. And I suppose that could indicate there's a link to what happened in the last month or so. But there's no indication or true indication of that. I mean, it could also even be something internal. So until Transnet releases some sort of definitive statement on that, we won't really know.
Mike, how does a situation such as the cyber hack and just general, poor management, I can only call it that, impact on us as a country if our ports aren't working properly? Is there another African country that's taking over?
Oh, yes, they're all waiting in the wings. And what you're saying is about what we like to call supply chains. Now, in our industry, we regard ourselves as the architects of supply chains. We design solutions for customers. And that's going to include the best routing for their cargo, whatever that may be. Now, in this particular situation, historically, we have been, as you say, a gateway to Africa, because a lot of cargo going into Africa from the rest of the world passes through our ports. And of course, a lot of cargo from the African countries leaving also passes through our ports. The effect of that is that we have something of a balanced trade. So you have vehicles, road vehicles generally, taking cargo up north, and the same vehicles bringing cargo back down south, which gives you a balanced trade, and the trucks are being paid for each way. Now, and it's happening, if the East Coast ports in particular, and we can talk about anything there from Somalia down to Maputo, if they start picking up cargo, that puts that in balance in place, because what happens then is that the export cargo out of the African countries starts moving out of those ports, and there is nothing coming down here, but we still have to move South African exports up northbound. So that creates a big imbalance and additional costs. The supply chains then look closely at what's happening on the East Coast, particularly. And if you look at South African citrus exports from Mpumalanga and Limpopo in particular, it's actually fairly natural for them to move out of Maputo. And that, I'm sure, is happening to some extent and will continue to happen and probably increase. Those are big numbers, the citrus exports, and others, mineral exports from Mpumalanga, that is a clear candidate for moving out of Maputo. Looking a bit further north, they have Beira and Nacala, both of which, and Nacala particularly, is a natural deep-water port, so it can take really big vessels. And both of those are ideal candidates for sort of Central African trade. And on the west coast, we have Walvis Bay, and the Walvis Bay Corridor, which is designed, amongst other things, to service the Gauteng market, and it's quite capable of doing so. So those people are alive and awake. They've got ports which are being well managed functionally, generally speaking, by foreign companies, and they are positioning themselves to take over that kind of business. So yes, we would expect to see some of that.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Mr. Mike Walwyn, the Director of Maritime Affairs at the South African Association of Freight Forwarders. Not